What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Monkey Knife Fight preview show for Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. I am EricLindquist. I am sitting alongside one Greg Ehrenberg today. Greg, how's it going, my dude?
Yeah, pretty good. We've got NBA Finals going on. We still have no baseball right now, but that comes back tomorrow. So yeah, pretty easy couple of days. You know, you and I played some video games and relaxed a little bit, but basketball to watch tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. I'm going to say, I need to probably find something useful. However, got to check out Breath of the Wild. That game is absolutely outrageous on the Nintendo Switch. Super good stuff. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell as you are getting on in here. Greg and I are going to be talking for the next 29-ish minutes here about all the goodies over at Monkey Knife Fight. They have so many options available for this game that we can be looking at. Player props-based games. So it's the exact same kind of thing that we've been talking about here on the previous shows, where you can be playing up against the house. You're not going up against peer-to-peer like you are on the regular DFS sites. The time that you have to put into it is not nearly as much as what you have to on the other DFS sites. So whether it's NBA, UFC, PGA, esports, or soccer, Monkey Knife Fight has it. So to get started, head over there, check out which contest type, buy-in, and all of the other goodies you want to put together, and make sure you take advantage. This is the most important part, is taking advantage of that $100 first match deposit bonus using the promo code Awesemo. That will go a long way. That is how you stay profitable in this game. Make sure that you take advantage of that now. But with that, you ready to get to a couple picks here?
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So I've isolated a couple here that I think really stand out to me on the board, places that I like to go. And I think there's actually some good debate because Game 3 was extremely lopsided. I think that there are some minutes that were maybe a little bit suppressed, but for the most part, we've seen big minutes out of all these starters. It's going to be a place where we're looking at a couple of these plays and we kind of know where to go with them. I guess it's just kind of a little bit of a preference on a few of these, but the first one that sticks out to me is in the more or less game type. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 34.5 points. I like the more than 34.5. The man has been on an absolute tear here of late, going 41 and 42 points in the first two games. He had 20 points with the 5 personal fouls, only 35 minutes in game 1. I think as long as he keeps his hands to himself, I mean, there is no stopping him getting to the rim in this spot. What do you think about more or less than 34.5 points for Giannis Antetokounmpo tonight?
So how many times in the postseason do you think Giannis has scored more than 34.5 points?
I'm guessing not that many is probably the answer. I'm going to say 4.
It is 3, and he's done it in back-to-back games. So, I mean, to me, Giannis has looked terrific in this series. However, you know, I can't expect him to continue to do something that he did twice in a row, but it only did once the rest of the entire postseason. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all the other games, he had one game against the Nets where he scored 40 points. That was also a game that went to overtime and he played 50 minutes. So in regulation games, he's actually only done it the last 2 games, has never done it any other point in the playoffs. So with that in mind, he's played really well in the playoffs. He's played really well in this series, but I think that the numbers are a little bit inflated. The other thing to consider too, which isn't really concerned for Giannis in terms of his overall production or anything like that, but maybe in terms of his points upside worries me a little bit. He has to come out in that game, what was it, like 3 minutes in? He has to come out. He ended up playing 38 minutes. He probably would have played, you know, something in the neighborhood of 40 to 41 had that game stayed close down the stretch and the starters came out a couple minutes early. But still, with that in mind, you know, we might see some of the other players in this game, Khris Middleton, Jrue Holiday. These guys could play, you know, 44, 45 minutes today. I don't think Giannis is that kind of playing time upside, just given that we saw him ask out of last game, you know, 3-4 minutes into the game. So yeah, I think Giannis is clearly the guy who we have to project for the most points in this game, the most fantasy points. But for him to score 35 or more, it's just not something he's done very frequently.
I think that that's actually a really good point. This is the first one off the bat. Fortunately, I haven't placed any coin on this one yet. So that gives me a little bit of an exemption. I think you bring up some good points. The thing I'm clicking on as well, as you were talking, Khris Middleton, only an 18.4 and 18.8% usage so far in the first 2 games of the series. since the playoffs started, Khris Middleton, 26.6% usage. If that were to increase a little bit more towards the mean, you could be seeing more shot volume going Khris Middleton's way. Maybe he gets up a couple more because, again, 34 and a half, if he's only gone over this number 3 times, if he's only gotten, I do like, I think maybe the less than 34 and a half, maybe a little bit more than what I was looking at from the beginning of this. But moving on to Devin Booker, the second side of this, I thought is going to be where we had more of the debate, but I suppose not. You definitely brought up good points there. I'm going to be going more towards the less than on 34 and a half for Giannis, but 27 and a half, I like less than for Devin Booker in this spot. I think our Awesemo projections, which you can definitely be checking out to look alongside of this. I believe our single game projections are free on the site here today, but Devin Booker is right now projected for around 27.7 with ours. But I'm just kind of looking through the last couple box scores for this game. And I would say specifically in the last 2 weeks, it seems like this offense really flows much more smoothly. It's a little bit more efficient. I mean, Chris Paul has been revelatory throughout this entire postseason. Not that Chris Paul wasn't a fantastic basketball player before, but 8 for 14 from the field last time out in game 3, 10 for 20, 12 for 19. The usage is kind of up. I mean, at the top end of what you're looking at. Like, I really like going to less than Devin Booker if I'm going to be bullish on Chris Paul. What do you think about 27 and a half points here for Devin Booker?
It's a very fair line. I have him projected for very slightly under it, but not to anything that would make me feel, super confident. I have Devin Booker projected for right around 27 points. So I had to take one side. It would be the under. But once again, it's not something that I'm massively confident in. If we look at Devin Booker too, he's been all over the place in terms of efficiency, in terms of just overall production so far in the playoffs. We've seen games where it's like, hey, Devin Booker went out and scored, 31 points in game 2. Then he comes back with 10 points in game 3. And, not something all that uncommon that we've seen from Devin Booker in the playoffs. If you look at some of his fantasy point totals and just his normal points totals, going back to the Clippers series, look at the final games. He scored 31, 25, 15, 20, 40. Those are the last 5 games of the series. So really all over the place with Devin Booker. He's been massively inconsistent. That makes it hard for me to confidently take an over or under with him.
That sounds good to me. I think it's an efficient line, but I also think that there is a possibility that if I'm going to be bullish on one player, then I might as well short another player. I think Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton are going to be a big part of my portfolio across the industry for tonight's game, for this game 4. And so it makes me want to short Devin Booker a little bit more. So yes, looking at my projections, looking at the Awesemo projections and looking at yours, we're kind of all around in the same ballpark, but I'm going to take less on Devin Booker. I think also his 3-point shot volume, he had a game 2 outlier, 7 for 12 from 3, but he's only a 34% 3-point shooter on the season, 35% for his career. Not like a notable 3-point shooter. And so maybe he sees a little bit of positive regression. He's had 1 for 7, 1 for 8, and 1 for 7 in 3 of his last 4 playoff games. If that increases a little bit, it could push more towards that 27 number. But I think I'm just going to be continuing to short him. Just a tough matchup for him in some of these spots, but no question a volume scorer, a guy who can get there. Next one I want to look at, I'm going to throw a little bit of an audible in there. So Giannis Antetokounmpo in the more or less 34 and a half. We've talked about that. I think less is probably the right side to be on for that. DeAndre Ayton, 12 and a half rebounds. What do you think about DeAndre Ayton and his prospects for tonight? And then 12 and a half. We've currently at Awesemo got him projected for 13.3. I have him projected for a little bit more than that, 13.6. The guy has a crazy rebound rate, only played 24 minutes here in the last game, still got 9 rebounds. His rebounding rate for the season, for the playoffs, 17.9%, an increase from his regular season production. I don't think anybody's questioning he's been a better player in the postseason than the regular season, but 12 and a half. What do you feel about that number?
That is also a very fair number, in my opinion. If we look at his rebound numbers so far in the series, he was obviously excellent in game 1, pulled down 19 rebounds, but he was under that mark in each of the last 2 games with 9 rebounds and 11. To your point, he only played 24 minutes last game. He also got into foul trouble, but foul trouble has been a somewhat regular occurrence for DeAndre, and he's picked up 3 or more personal fouls in 4 consecutive games now. If I had to take a side, just given how high his rebound rate has been in the postseason, I would lean towards the over. But once again, not one that I feel massively confident. It's right around where I have him projected.
All righty. Well, then that's a pretty quick one here as well. I'm going to be kind of living in this more or less game type is kind of where I've established we're going to be. Tyler, let's pull up the one that I think that we might be able to have a little bit more of a conversation on. I'm trying to pull it up. It's something that I've already wagered some coin on myself, and so I need to go into my account and find the number here, or you can pull it up on the screen to help me out here quick. But the Khris Middleton fantasy points alongside, I believe it wasn't Jrue Holiday. It was, yes, DeAndre Ayton. So we have 41 and a half and 40. Is it DeAndre Ayton 45 and a half now?
It's 41 and a half for both of them.
41 and a half. Okay, perfect. I'm just looking on my screen, a little bit smaller there. I had 40 and a half yesterday with DeAndre Ayton, and I played the more on 40 and a half fantasy points, and I took more than 41 and a half fantasy points for Khris Middleton. I'd already talked a little bit about how his usage has been down at the beginning of this series, only around 18% usage the last 2 games here in this Phoenix series. I think if that regresses back to the 26% number that we've been seeing from him for usage in this postseason, that we could be seeing some increased shot volume, increased opportunity for him to garner more fantasy points. Definitely going to have to get there primarily by scoring. But what do you feel about both of these numbers?
I feel, once again, I think the Khris Middleton one is pretty accurate. If I had to take a side, I would lean towards the under, just because, like you said, the usage hasn't really been there for him as of late. The reason being also is because Giannis is playing so well. It's also one of the reasons that I tend to lean towards the under or less than for Giannis's points, is just because there's no way that Khris Middleton maintains an 18.8, 18.4% usage rate. He's going to start to take a little bit more shots. But, even with that said, he's been, fairly well under the 41 and a half mark for the majority of the games that Giannis has played the last 3 games in terms of fantasy points, monkey knife fight scoring for Khris Middleton. Even in game 1, where Middleton had a usage rate over 30% and played 45 minutes, he finished with 38.4 monkey knife fight fantasy points. He's been under 39 in all 3 games this series. So I would lean towards the less than for Khris Middleton. As for Ayton, I feel pretty good about the less than 41 and a half. That's well below where I have him projected. A lot of Ayton's success in the playoffs has been predicated, at least from a fantasy standpoint, based on defensive stats. Obviously the rebounds, those are big, except he's another guy. I mean, the usage generally is not there for Ayton. He had a usage rate over 20% last game, but his games before them, 12% usage rate, 14, 14, 13, 19, 16. So in general, Ayton isn't a very high usage guy. His points per game, he's only scored over 20 points, was like 5 times in the entire postseason. And he just had these, what I would consider to be pretty unsustainable defensive stats, particularly steals. He's had at least 1 steal in something like 8 of the last 9 games. Last 2 games of the series, he's had 5 steals. For somebody who in the regular season averaged well under a steal per game, he actually averaged 0.6 steals per game in the regular season. I don't think there's anything about the defensive stats we've seen from Ayton that are sustainable. If you look at his production overall for the playoffs, he's averaging about 36 fantasy points. I just think the number is a little bit too high.
Yeah, I think that those are good points as well. I think for me, it comes down also to his rebounding rate. Seeing a 17.9% rebounding rate, he's involved in the pick and roll here with Chris Paul. The minutes were obviously limited big time by foul trouble last time out, makes it look a little bit lower. As you said, yes, the usage is not going to be his primary way of getting there, but he gets a lot of putbacks, gets a lot of opportunities that are kind of gimmies. And again, defensive stats, I also think that maybe he could be seeing more block opportunity on the flip side of that. Obviously, Brook Lopez, not even a guy who goes into the post with any frequency, definitely sits out on the perimeter. So much tougher to garner any kind of block shot volume. But we have seen some spiked shot volume or block shots there, 4 in the Clippers game there, and a couple spots 2s throughout the entire box score. Had 0 last time out, but has seen a couple spots where he picks up 2 or 3 of those. If he gets them from the block perspective as opposed to the steal perspective, that wouldn't be too shocking to me either. But if you're looking at like a couple of these more or less thens, are there any that really stick out to you? Is there a player tonight that you're more bullish on than the field, or somebody that looks like it's popping a little bit more in your projections? I mean, this is game 4. These numbers are starting to get very efficient to match up for this series and then just for the course of these entire playoffs. But might there be a player you're looking to be a little bit more bullish on?
I'm just going through them to see which kind of ones pop up. A lot of the players, are guys we've already talked about. See Jrue Holiday, more or less 7.5 assists. I think that is really fair. The next more or less here. Let's see, fantasy points for, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's talk about Jrue Holiday, because I think this 7.5 number shows up a lot here. 7.5 assists. I think on the front end of that, we were looking a little bit. I was going through some of the Awesemo's projections beforehand as well, and kind of comparing them to what I've had for this entire series, what it would be in a neutral series. Jrue Holiday, he's seeing only 2 minutes more per game here of late from his regular season. I mean, you could see well into the mid 40s in a couple of these spots. He had 42 minutes in number of games, 48 in that game 7 it was against Brooklyn. I'm looking at the Phoenix game here. Yeah, so 40 minutes, 39-40 through the first 3 of this series. Average 6.6 assists per game. So I think inflated that it would be around 7.5, but 26.7% assist rate for the entire year for him. I think Giannis, just if Giannis starts to get his assist rate to be back more towards what it has been for the year as well, going over to his assist rate since these playoffs began, he's been a 24.1% assist rate guy. We have not seen any assist volume from Giannis whatsoever. 6, 4, 4, 3, 4, his last 5 games of this postseason. I think if we start to see him distribute a little bit more, maybe Phoenix tries to help get the ball out of his hand, I think he could pluck a couple of assists away where 7.5 might be a little bit high for Jrue Holiday, and I might be looking to short it and go less than. Is that something that you might do as well?
Once again, I think it's a pretty fair number. If I had to take one side, though, I hate to keep disagreeing with you, Eric, but it would be the more just based on, I mean, here's his assist numbers over the last, and once again, I mean, 7.5 assists. That's almost exactly what I have him projected for. But here's assist total so far in this series, 9, 7, 9. Then you go back to the Atlanta series, 9, 13, 9, 12, 7, 10. So, you know, if you have to go to, let's see, how many times he had under 7 in the entire postseason. You know, since the Nets series, he's only been under that number twice, or 3 times he's been under 7. So, you know, I think especially considering the recent games with the minutes on the uptick, I'd feel better towards more than 7.5 assists. But once again, it's to me a pretty fair line. It's really close to what I have him projected for. But just based on that, he's been over that number more often than not over the last couple of weeks. You know, that would have me leaning towards the over.
Let's get weird with it. I've got something that I want to take a look at, and it's more of just kind of talking through whether or not this is something that I might want to be playing tonight. Let's head to the 3-point shootout. Can we pull that up on the screen, Tyler? I want to try out the 3-point shootout. So if you're on Monkey Knife Fight, you're able to easily scroll through all of the game types. They have the alt, they have the featured, more or less rapid fire and stat shootout. So I'm looking at the stat shootout, the 3-point shootout. 9.5 3-pointers is where we're looking at reaching here in order to 1.8x our money. 9.5 threes. Who are the guys shooting the most 3-pointers in this series? Because right from the get-go, I want to be looking at Khris Middleton as somebody to possibly be a little bit bullish here on. Would Brook Lopez be another guy that we could possibly be playing in that? Is he shooting enough shot volume to make it viable for him to be a guy? If we're just trying to target getting to more than 9.5 3-pointers, who would be the 3 players that we should look at putting together into this play? Because I think that this is one where, like Khris Middleton, I know I've been talking about Devin Booker regressing, but at least he's been shooting a large volume of threes, going through his box score, 7, 12, 8, and 7 in his last 4. In this series, he's averaging well above 9 3-pointers per game. Who would be the 3 players you might want to put into that play?
Yeah, so I think the answers are very clear. It is Devin Booker, Khris Middleton, maybe one that will seem not in place with those other names, except just based on my projections, he's clearly the right answer, is Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder shooting so many threes in the series, and also almost all the looks he gets are open looks. So, you know, look at Jay Crowder. Game 1 for him was not good. He made 0% of his shots from the field, and Jay Crowder, he's a better than 0% shooter. But, you know, look at his games beyond that. Game 2. Jay Crowder ended up making, would be helpful if the box score loads up. Here we go. So game 2, Jay Crowder made 3 threes. Game 3, Jay Crowder made 6 threes. So still overall for the series, he went 0 for 5 in game 1. He's still averaging 3 3-pointers made for the series. You go back to the series against the Clippers. He made 2 threes per game. That was only on 28% shooting. He was still averaging 5.8 threes per game. You know, you go back to the series against the Nuggets. He made 3 threes per game. The series against the Lakers, he made 2.3 threes per game. So he's almost all of his field goal attempts have come from 3 so far in the postseason. At least the vast majority of them have. So, you know, just because he's a guy who almost all the shots he takes are from 3, it's not that he takes a whole lot of shots overall as a high usage rate. he just plays within himself. He's able to get a lot of open looks because of the teammates he plays with. So Jrue Crowder is the player I have projected for the most 3-pointers today.
Yeah, I was going to say Lopez, definitely not the right answer as I'm going through for me, it was just the idea of him being a guy who just primarily shoots 3-pointers for a lot of his attempts, had some bigger games. But as we saw in the last time out, 21 minutes. Don't forget, game 3 was a huge blowout too. So a lot of those guys had suppressed minutes. 21 is pretty glaring. That would be probably less than his normal allotment we'd be looking at. Only played 23 and 28 in games 1 and 2. Doesn't really play down in the post like a normal big though. And obviously, yeah, not shooting nearly enough 3-pointers, 4, 2, and 5 to be viable for that. Love the Jay Crowder call as an addition. I think that those three together on the more than 9.5, I think that seems like a solid spot to be going to. 1.8x your money. That sounds pretty good to me. If you guys want to fire up anything, if you have questions about any of these plays, if you're sitting on Monkey Knife Fight, scrolling through some of them, let us know what you think are some of the best plays that exist on the board. We'll tell you whether or not we are in line with you, if we're in lockstep, or like Greg and I, who all we do is disagree here right now on a couple of these plays. But again, when you get efficient lines, when you get things that are a little bit more efficient, you're trying to find a slight edge here or there. And we're kind of going through those, trying to help you out. I think the more or less game type is a really good spot to be putting a bunch of your action in today. If you're playing over on Monkey Knife Fight, make sure you're using that promo code Awesemo to get the $100 first deposit match bonus. But Greg, is there something else that really sticks out to you? I'm going through the rapid fire as well, trying to find a couple here or there. Everything looks pretty efficient, but is there something that might stick out to you?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through everything and seeing what comes up. So let me look at some of the rapid fires. I also feel a lot of these we've kind of talked about already, so a lot of the players that come up, and it's, ones that we've talked about. But here, there's a rapid fire. Can you find, Tyler, the rapid fire that is, it's the 1.6x. It's more towards the right. It has Giannis Antetokounmpo points versus Devin Booker points, Jrue Holiday versus Chris Paul assists, and DeAndre Ayton versus Khris Middleton rebounds. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Eric?
Yep, found it. Got it right here. The second one listed on the board. Yep.
All right. So, going through some of these guys, I would say in terms of Booker versus Giannis points, I think 7.5, that's a really wide spread for this one. And, I think there's a lot of recency bias baked into this. Like you said before, Giannis has only scored over 34 points, even though we did it 2 games in a row. He did it once the entire rest of the postseason, and that was in an overtime game. So in terms of regulation, he's done the last 2 games, and that's it. So Devin Booker, I have this as much closer than 7.5 point spread. I think it would be more fair if this was something like 4.5 or 5 points. So that's something that I lean towards, would be Devin Booker plus 7.5 points. Jrue Holiday versus Chris Paul for assists. We have Chris Paul minus 1.5. I'd lean towards Chris Paul for that one. I think this is a spot where, it's hard to really lean too much into, narratives and how they're going to affect the game. However, Chris Paul, just given that the Suns lost last game, I think it's likely to see Chris Paul play more minutes, and he's somebody who could stand to gain a lot of minutes, certainly more minutes to gain than Jrue Holiday. The reason being is that Chris Paul in this series played 37 minutes, 41 minutes, and 34 minutes. There's a lot more room for that to go up than Jrue Holiday is already playing 40 minutes per game. So if Chris Paul gets somewhere in the neighborhood of 40, that really bolsters his projection. So I would go towards Chris Paul minus 1.5, and then DeAndre Ayton versus Khris Middleton for rebounds. That's kind of a weird line to sort out because it's Khris Middleton plus 6.5 rebounds, but I'll take Khris Middleton plus 6.5 because it's another one pretty widespread.
Yeah, and we've got him in for right around 7.2 rebounds. I think getting 6.5 basically is saying that Ayton has to get to 14 to beat him out if Middleton gets to 17, or if he gets his 7 rebounds, which would be kind of a normal allotment. Again, 6.5 rebounds, a large number. I really do like this call. This is going to be added to the card. I think that this is a really solid way. You have to only get 2 out of the 3 as well. We're only looking to hit on 2 of the 3. And I think the Booker and the Middletons are setting up really, really well as positive EV plays. I think that's going to be a great addition to the card for this evening. Kind of to summarize, let's kind of close it out this way because we got a couple minutes left. Who do you see being the difference maker as somebody that we can make bullish in every single prop down the line across the industry, in our DFS lineups, in everything? Who is the make or break play for you tonight for game 4?
At least in terms of monkey knife fight, it's going to be Giannis under 34 and a half points, just because that's the one that I feel best about. Like, I mean, at any other point, I have to assume 34 and a half, that has to be the highest points that we've seen from Giannis anywhere ever the entire season. Certainly even in the playoffs where he's had a pretty strong playoffs, that's still a pretty gaudy number. So just overall being a little bit lighter on Giannis than anybody else.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true. 34 and a half is a gigantic number. There's no question about that one. Definitely somebody that we're looking at shorting now over on Monkey Knife Fight. Gonna have to amend a video that I made yesterday and put it out in the Twitter sphere to call myself out that maybe I was a little bit out of line. But we're seeing an increased opportunity and usage for Giannis. Somebody in the chat earlier said that they absolutely need Giannis to go for 40 a night or the Bucks can't win. I do not think that is true. I think Khris Middleton can easily step in, and if he ends up getting rolling here a little bit, we've only seen 18% usage from the last two. I definitely see that reverting back towards some kind of a mean. Khris Middleton is a guy that I want to be very bullish on tonight in all of my lineups. I think Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton from the Sun side, guys that I'm also bullish on. But we take a look at numbers, and we're trying to look to short or be on the positive side of numbers. DeAndre Ayton has some massive rebound opportunities, but I do think that rapid fire that you plucked out of the sky is a fantastic one to kind of round out your cards. But Greg, as we kind of close out here, any final words for the people?
No, just usual stuff, what I've been saying at this point of the year, which is go Suns. I would like them to, I'd like them to win today for personal reasons. But, beyond that, I think we covered pretty much all the players that are, essential.
Somebody did. Awesemo. Of course, somebody had to catch it. Yesterday, we were on a show together and we had matching white tees. Today, we have matching blue color. I think this is the identical color, correct?
No. I mean, what do I know? I don't know colors, but no. These are different. And also, he's wearing a collared shirt. He's got a stripe in it. It's totally different. I probably have more sweat stains. There's plenty of differences in the shirts.
And with that, I think we're going to round out the show. Thank you so much to Monkey Knife Fight for giving us the platform to be able to talk about some props, to be able to talk about some of our favorite plays over on their site for today. Make sure you take advantage of that $100 deposit promo code, first match deposit bonus for anybody using the promo code Awesemo. He's Greg Ehrenberg. I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck tonight in Game 4.